Hello and welcome to Indiana Normal's Cannabis Conversations with the Candidates 2022 Primary Election Edition. I'm Neil Smith and I'm joined by colleagues Indiana Normal Secretary Jack Kane, Cannabis Nurse Shelley McDonald, and Monroe County Cannabis Coalition Leader Brian Campbell. Our guest tonight is Democratic candidate for 51st District Indiana House, Jestin Kohler. Jestin, welcome to Indiana Normal.
Thank you, Neil. Nice to be here. Appreciate you guys having me on.
To start things off, tell us a little something about yourself. What's your background and why do you want to run for office?
Sure. I'm 45 years old. I was born and raised here in Angola, Indiana, northeastern corner of the state. Married, have two beautiful daughters that attend the public school here in Fremont. After high school, I left the area. I graduated. I worked in a number of factories and restaurants in the area and kind of thought I wanted to see more of the world. So I took off. I spent several years living down in Florida, lived in Nashville for a stint, lived in Southern California for several years. And then 2019, my family and I decided that we were going to see, raise the kids in the Midwest kind of thing. So we sold our house and came here. And the reason I'm running, kind of give Democrats in the area a voice. They've been kind of dormant for a while. I'd like to try to energize the party a bit. I think the direction of the state right now is leaves a lot to be desired, and I'd like to throw my hat in the ring and see if we can make some change.
What led you to strongly support relegalization of cannabis?
Well, it's kind of something that I've enjoyed cannabis for a long time. I've been an advocate for many years. I think it's a shame at this point that we're still locking up friends, family, neighbors over, possession of marijuana. Outside of that, in this district in particular, you can drive, any one of my potential constituents can drive 15 minutes across the Michigan border, give Michigan their tax dollars and drive home and become criminals on their way home. I think that's a shame.
Kind of hypocritical, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Shelley, you've got a question, I believe.
Yeah, I do. And you kind of answered it already. So let me change it up a little bit. Let's kind of talk about all those people crossing that line. What can you do to protect them if you do enter the state house?
Well, above everything, I'd love to be an idealist and optimistic. But more than anything, I'm a realist. So I am just one person. Obviously, at the state level, it's going to require more than just one person being elected. But I would absolutely be a voice in the House in favor of re-legalizing. Along those lines, once I get there, certainly happy to try to influence my colleagues to take the same stance. I know the state has, multiple bills were proposed during this last legislative session. None of them made it far at all, kind of crickets once they all got the floor and were signed to committees and so forth. I will absolutely be an advocate and would like to see something happen. The state, every year now that we don't do something about this, our neighbors are getting further ahead of us in this game. And I think it's something that we need to get moving on.
Mm-hmm. By any chance, do you happen to know about how many people are incarcerated in your district right now or caught up in the legal system?
I tried to find that information before this call. The information that's available is not abundant. It's not. There's nothing. I couldn't figure that out. No.
That happens. Yeah. Jack?
Hey, Jack, you're on mute, my friend.
Good idea.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm assuming you know some people that use cannabis and you met them over the years.
I know quite a few people for sure.
Is there anything unique about them that they're as opposed to the general population that makes them stand out?
No, they're hardworking professionals. You wouldn't know them if you saw them at the store, apart from anyone else. They're not doing wild things. There's none of that sort of none of that reefer madness stuff for sure. They're average folks. They have kids, they have jobs, they work hard, they love their community, same as everyone else.
Exactly. We're trying to break that stigma. So, and thank you, Justin.
Of course.
And Brian?
Thanks for joining us tonight, buddy. I'd just like to know, why do you think cannabis was made illegal in the first place?
Well, as far as the history of it goes, I think it's a long and complicated past. I think specifically it threatened a lot of industries, paper, pharmaceuticals, and there was a large propaganda campaign. William Randolph Hearst, his fortune was being threatened, and he thought he'd find a way to take it out on Mexicans and minorities. So kind of from its roots, I think it has a racist tinge, kind of, something used to oppress black and brown communities. And also, again, back to kind of the business aspect of it, threatened pharmaceutical companies, petroleum companies, paper companies, that sort of thing.
Now, do you believe that, when they made it illegal, they put it in a Schedule 1. Do you believe that it has no medical benefits at all?
Oh no, I believe it absolutely has medical benefits. Yeah, I think it's really, it's a shame that it was put in Schedule 1 because it basically prevented any sort of research from being done. I think that was certainly an error. When that was passed, I believe it was supposed to be a temporarily placed into Schedule 1 upon further review, and that was during the Nixon administration, if I'm not mistaken, and it's remained there ever since.
Thank you.
Now, it sounds like you know the bit about the Schaefer Commission report.
I do, a bit. Not as much as you, I'm sure.
There's 22
I believe
volumes.
they found benefits of it, and then it was just basically shelved by the Nixon administration. I believe that whole portion of the report was kind of buried and never saw the light again.
It called for what they termed decriminalization, which one of the problems we've had with working with trying to get legalization going is, some people, they say, we want decriminalization. Well, you got to define decriminalization. By the way, do you know what the definition of decriminalization is?
Well, I would, I guess I don't know the Webster's definition, but I would assume it to be that it's no longer a criminal offense. I believe that the difference between decriminalization and legalization would be, with legalization, we would be able to tax, we would be able to regulate as far as, have the product be tested, go through, strenuous tests and make sure that the proper product reaches the market and so forth. Decriminalization, as far as I know, just means that, if you're found to have it in your possession, that it's not a criminal offense.
Decriminalization has another unfortunate definition in that, okay, we're going to take your weed when we catch you with it, and if you've got over 30 grams on it, you're still going to go to jail. So the decriminalization definition has to be, anytime you are speaking about that, you have to make a differentiation or define it. How would you describe the endocannabinoid system to a colleague? Or how would you describe it to a resident in your district?
Right. I knew you were going to bring this up.
Gotcha. Oh,
yeah, really. Really, to the best of my knowledge, your body has receptors. Those are manipulated or changed through the use of cannabis. And it can, lessen feelings of pain, lessen feelings of anxiety, lessen, those sort of things. So that's about the extent of my endocannabinoid knowledge, and that might have even been wrong.
No, I think you did great. You did great, and you're right. We do have receptors in our body all along our spinal cord, even down to the largest organ of our body, our skin, and that are kind of made for cannabis and help our bodies restore homeostasis. So good answer.
Yeah,
Oh, well, thank you.
even our pets have endocannabinoid systems. Animals. That's why CBD is able to treat dogs and well any animal really.
Right. No, I saw recently that they found that it was beneficial for cattle to be able to relax, digest, lay down, which helps them to digest their food and curd their food and so forth. So yeah, I'm sure that it has lots of wide range of benefits.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
They've been feeding cattle hemp in some places,
Right,
and
right.
said the cows are a lot more relaxed, happier.
Happy
Yeah,
cow.
that's a good point. That's a good point. So do you think Indiana can legalize even if the federal government doesn't?
Again, back to my point about being a realist, I would love for them to. I just know enough about the state and the power of the church in this state and how conservative this state is to say that definitively. It would be nice to have the help of the federal government to just solve this for us. It seems we're still a ways off from any substantial movement from our own government. You guys are all from Indiana. You saw how long it took them to sell alcohol on Sundays. It's just something that is going to be, we might be the last state that does it. We might be literally the last state that gets there. So yeah, I don't know.
So what has to happen at the state level?
Well, we need to continue pressuring the legislators. If this is a topic that means a lot to you as a voter, then you need to know where your candidate stands. You need to ask them those sort of questions in a public forum, get them on the record for where they stand, figure out anything that you can do to persuade them otherwise, of course. I mean, overall, education is what's really going to change things in the state. It'd be great to have, again, folks like yourselves there in an official setting. I know you do those sort of things. But just talking through these things, talking through the benefits, continue to bring them studies about, this helps this helps that. This could financially help our state. One of the things about Indiana in particular that I think is interesting in this conversation is, we have amazing farmland here. We have very intelligent and hardworking and innovative farmers here. We're really kind of tying their hands by not allowing them to explore, like the cultivation of industrial hemp, or even just if we got into a legalized marijuana setting, how the innovation that they could bring. They might, I don't know, you could end up with some family farms that do kind of an artisanal kind of strain, any of that sort of stuff. So, the economic benefits, I know we always talk about in this state, we talk about corn and soybeans and wheat. Why not put industrial hemp in that pile of things that could be profitable for farmers in the state? I think it's a no-brainer. But anyway.
Okay.
Cannabis is the fifth largest cash crop in the nation.
I would believe that.
Fifth largest cash crop. Jack, you have a question, I believe. You're muted again, Jack.
I'm muted again.
If I want to stay muted, I'll stay muted, okay? So
Hey, it's a mute point.
I'll just answer my own question then.
Sorry.
No worries.
One of the things that comes up a lot, I think, in the legislators is that they're trying to equate the use of alcohol and the effects of alcohol against the effect of compare them with the effects of marijuana and the high. And I just don't think that's adequate or accurate to do that. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that and your experience with that.
No, I agree entirely. There are no numbers available for how many people die through marijuana-related car accidents. There's never been a person, to my knowledge, that has died from an overdose of marijuana. I believe it's impossible. We see all the time, we see stories of drunk driving incidents. You can overdose from alcohol. So and just besides that, like the general behavior of someone who's consumed marijuana versus consumed alcohol, right, is a totally different experience. You're not gonna smoke a bunch of marijuana and then run out and get into a bunch of trouble, start fights at the bar, that sort of thing. You're gonna just kind of relax, probably listen to some music, hang out on the couch, chit chat with your friends and so forth. So the actual, just the behavior of someone on those two substances is quite different. And, alcohol has a much higher addiction rate than cannabis does as well. So they're really apples and oranges, in my opinion.
Good explanation. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was just wanting to know, how would you dispel the propaganda and fake news around cannabis? Because there's this narrative that it's this horrible thing and it's going to cause addiction and all these sorts of issues. How would you show that that's not even true?
Right. That is an interesting question, because it's taken so long for us to get to where we are now. It's so ingrained with people's mentality at this point. But I think seeing how other states have responded to legalization or to medicinal marijuana, and seeing that the sky didn't fall in any of these places is a good place to start. Here in Indiana, we have Michigan legalized, Illinois legalized, Ohio medicinal, Kentucky could potentially be medicinal shortly. As you look around and you see the other states where this is helping individuals, and the sheriff you guys, or the sheriff candidate you guys had on the other night with his personal story about his mother and cancer, those are very important stories to tell people. I think, and I might be off base here, but one of the things that I've always thought about, kind of the difference between Republicans and Democrats, is that as a Democrat, I don't need to experience something to have empathy for someone else having not experienced it. I don't need to experience being gay to support the LGBTQ community. I don't have to experience, being an addict, a meth addict, to understand that, that we need to treat meth addiction. And I think that this is kind of one of those kind of differences that we get into. Everyone can be against it until they have a personal story. My dad, my brother, my son got injured. We were talking about that kind of before the show, and this helped him or her, or this, my nephew was addicted to opioids and used cannabis as an exit drug. I don't know, at least for me, that's kind of how I view these things is, I don't need to understand everything to still be able to say, okay, you know what, this is a problem that could be solved by this. So I guess to answer your point, Brian, kind of, education is of course great. Going around and talking to people about studies and so forth is great. But really when it comes down to it, personal stories are probably going to make the biggest connection. And again, maybe seeing that other states have done this, the sky hasn't fallen. They're, doing quite well financially through taxes, kind of show the overall benefits.
Now, with that said about addiction, something really personal to me, cannabis is seen as a gateway drug. Now, do you see it as an exit drug more than anything? And if so, opiates have just devastated the country, not just the state. I mean, they have destroyed lives. Do you think that cannabis should be a first line of defense instead of people having to say, oh, this is something I should look into after I've tried all these pharmaceuticals that have 14 side effects and addictive traits?
Sure.
Do you think that
No, absolutely. And I think in the places, in the areas where this has been studied, it has been proven that it will help with, the side effects of coming down from an opioid addiction. So yeah, I think it should absolutely be a first line of defense, for sure. And to your gateway drug question, and this is some kind of that you had brought up before the show here that I thought was interesting. As a child, the DARE program and so forth, when you're growing up, you are taught that marijuana is in the same class as cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines. That the Schedule 1 thing is like, this is all the same class. So when you're in high school and you're at a bonfire and somebody has a joint and you smoke that joint and you're like, hey, this isn't bad. Does that mean that those other things are equally not as bad? So I don't believe in the gateway argument. I think that, people that go on to do harder drugs are possibly seeking, a different high. They might just have an addictive personality and so forth. But I do see where that is a problem where it's like, okay, these things are not the same. So if you've told me my whole life that smoking a joint is going to be the same thing as if I did heroin and I smoked a joint, I'm like, oh, what was that? That was nothing. Then in that regard, I might be like, if I were curious, I might be like, hey, well, maybe I'd check out that other thing too, because that other one was fun. Anyway, I'm kind of off on a tangent there, but.
Well, the sad thing is that methamphetamine and stuff like that's a Schedule 2. Cannabis, they see medicinal value in amphetamines because they're giving our kids Adderall, Ritalin, stuff like that. But yet cannabis supposedly has no medicinal value, yet all these states have went medical. It pokes holes in their propaganda and lies.
For sure.
Neil?
What do you, Jestin, do you think that it's only a matter of lack of education, ingrained fear that is stopping legalization, or is there something a bit more nefarious? The money involved.
Oh, for sure. We are a large, with Eli Lilly being in Indianapolis and supporting a lot of the candidates, there's certainly money involved. I know Eli Lilly got their start kind of in this field, so it's unusual that they would be so resistant, but now they're, an enormous pharmaceutical company. I'm sure that there's resistance from private or from prison, from the prison system, the petroleum industry, city and county governments that kind of fund their government, fund their police force through these kind of stops, arrests, tickets, asset forfeitures, and so forth. I do believe that there's definitely money behind it.
We find a lot of resistance to legalization from the law enforcement community. They make a lot of money off of cannabis. Cannabis users are frequently the low-hanging fruit for law enforcement for civil asset forfeitures. If you were elected to the General Assembly, would you do whatever you could to at least reduce the use of civil asset forfeiture?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's that's basically a crime in itself, right? You should not be taking other people's property under the assumption that it was purchased through sales of marijuana, which I guess is their reasoning. Absolutely. I think that's that's something that should happen right away. And to take it one step further, once we get to legalization, I think there needs to be some sort of expungements, some clearing of records from folks that have been convicted of marijuana related offenses, people that might be in jail currently or be released and that sort of thing. So clean that all up. It was a shame that they were there in the first place, and in many other states they wouldn't be there. It's kind of just because of their location that they're serving a time or have this record, and those records affect everything from getting a house, getting a job, that sort of thing. It really does a lot of damage to the community.
Yes, it does. Shelley, over to you.
So then would you support a government level authorized by statute cannabis commission?
I don't think that's the worst idea. I think studying, I guess it would kind of depend on who you're going to put on the commission, right? It would need to be a wide range of voices, scientists, folks in the medical community, community leaders, etc. I don't see how a commission would hurt. I think it is, it's not necessary at this point. I think you kind of skip the commission. I think there's enough data out there. But if it was something that got a couple of extra votes in to promise that there would be a commission, then that's certainly something to explore.
Jack?
Well, you just answered my question, which was what was your cannabis commission look like? So you talked about scientists, medical. Who else do you think might be on that commission? And the idea is to set up guidelines as to how Indiana is going to handle legalization when it finally happens.
Right,
Kind of a
right.
preemptive.
Well, sure. I think you'd probably have to fold in business leaders, figure out licensing requirements. Again, scientists to figure out the kind of the research part, the lab sort of studies that are required to make sure that patients or buyers are buying product that is of good quality, doesn't contain pesticides, mold, et cetera. So kind of a range of folks that you would need to have in there. I think voices from the community would be great, but they don't necessarily, you need experts. You don't just need opinions. So it's great if somebody comes in with their opinion, but if it kind of derails the conversation of the facts, then they wouldn't be needed.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's a good idea.
What about cultivators? Would you want to pull them
Bring
in?
them in. Absolutely. They'd be an important part of this process for sure.
Now, if you were to have a chance of introducing a bill to re-legalize cannabis in Indiana, would you allow people to cultivate cannabis at home?
I believe there would need to be a provision for a certain amount. I know other states allow for growing for personal use. I believe that you should be able to grow some at home. Now, obviously, that gets into the questions about how is that taxed? It obviously isn't. How is that regulated? It obviously isn't. So not something that you're going to grow and sell in any way. But personal use, I think that you should be able to do so at home.
Now, some people require more cannabis than others, to where some states would say, well, you can have up to 3 plants. And let's say they've never grown before. So they're not great plants, they're not really budding a lot. What if people need, say, 6 plants or, more than that to get started, to actually have an amount, because let's say 3 plants and all they get is an ounce, which would be horrible. But let's say they only get an ounce, but they need 3 ounces.
Sure. Yeah, right. If it were legalized, they could certainly try to find a place to purchase those additional ounces. I don't think 3 plants is enough. I think when you're talking about growing cycles and length that it takes to grow and so forth, you would need to have more than 3 plants allowed. So I think Michigan does a dozen. I think that would be a fine place to start and kind of see what happens from there.
Yeah.
Again, though, I'm not the expert on this. There's probably someone else that has a really good answer about that. That's just kind of what I know and kind of what I think would be a good starting place.
Yeah, if you had 12, you could have them in different cycles. You could have one budding, starters, and just have them in different stages. Sure. That way you're constantly having all of this.
Right.
All right, I think we got to pay those bills.
Let's do this.
Okay, yeah, we'll take that commercial break and we'll be back just a couple of minutes.
Indiana NORML memberships are back. Help us raise nonprofit dollars by becoming a member of Indiana NORML. The money raised will be used to educate the public about cannabis reform in Indiana, only for $25 a year. Visit www.indiananormal.org.
And welcome back to Cannabis Conversations with the Candidates with Indiana Normal. We have a question from the audience, and there's been a lot of studies, very weak, very poorly done studies that have been released, and the media is carrying a lot of them. There was one study released here not long ago that indicated that cannabis really wasn't a cure for anxiety, but it only had, what was it, 24 subjects or something like that.
Mhm.
What was it?
I don't remember right off the top of my head, but it was a very, very low number.
Very small sample size. Media picks that up. Is there anything you can do on a state government level to stop disinformation, things like that? What can be done about that?
Yeah, I wish I could say that there was something that could be done to stop it, but there's not. Obviously, people have, newspapers are able to publish what they'd like under First Amendment rights and so forth. You couldn't use the state to stop a newspaper from printing information that was disinformation necessarily. But, I could see where, again, this kind of comes back to the intent of the publisher, right? So these newspapers are hoping to keep the status quo. They're not offering their readers information that is accurate. I wish there is something that could be done about that from a state level, but there really is not. Although I understand your frustration.
How would dispensaries be allocated throughout the state to ensure safe and reliable access to residents, in your opinion? And would you allow out-of-state cannabis medical cards to be recognized at those dispensaries?
Oh, I do think you should have reciprocal agreements with out-of-state medicinal users for sure. As far as the licenses to open a dispensary, I think you'd probably look at it similar to how the state addresses liquor licenses. I think you would need to, kind of set aside a portion of these licenses for people that have been the most affected by the prohibition of marijuana. Allow 10% of them specifically designed for Black folks, let's say. Allow everyone to get their hands in the pie. I don't think that it should be once it's legalized on a federal level, we're going to see a flood of mega corporations that come in and just take everything over. There's going to be a 7-Eleven in every town that just sells cannabis or whatever it is. So I think you would want to somehow prop up the mom and pop type shops, whether that was through subsidies or license requirements, to try to keep things local and try to keep the money in the community that is spent.
Yeah, most of those, if big companies get in on it, they're more worried about quantity, not quality. As where mom and pops are going to be more all natural, no pesticides. But of course, I mean they got to meet a standard to go into dispensary, but
Sure.
I can see a big corporation just trying to take over and pump out a bunch of mids instead of high grade cannabis like the mom and pop.
I think you would get into a similar situation with what you do with alcohol, beer being a good example of that, right? You would have these large corporations that would send you the Miller Lite or Coors Light or whatever, nothing against those guys. But then you'd have the smaller farms that would be doing the more, the artisanal. Yeah.
No, that's a great way to describe it. I'm currently in a town in Michigan that has, I believe, 7 dispensaries, all recreational, or as the locals call it, the pot shots. It's been the product levels vary throughout, depending on the chain and the licensing structure. A micro license, it grows and makes all their own products. So typically, in my opinion, I've had really good luck finding stuff with the micro stores. So on that, what would be your proposed purchase and possession limits?
I don't see why you would have a limit on purchase and possession. Unless you're trying to resell. Who am I to say if you can, how much you can smoke in a week, or if you only come to the shop once every 6 months, maybe you stock up once. Make one trip to the store. Like where we are, from where I live, it's 20 minutes to get to the nearest grocery store. If I were elderly, let's say, and didn't always make a trip to town, I might go buy a quarter pound and sit on it for a couple months or whatever. I don't know. I don't see where having a purchase or possession limits would help a whole lot with that.
What type of methods of consumption do you think should be allowed?
Let's do it all. Vapes, patches, smoking, creams, balms, however you want to call it. I think they should all be allowed.
Very good. Very good. Jack?
Yeah, okay. Now, when it comes to medical cannabis, there's couple different ways that states have gone about this. Some of them have the legislature have an exact list of these are the only conditions that you can use medical cannabis for. Other states kind of let it up to between the doctor and the patient. What are your feelings about that? Give some of your ideas about that.
No, I think between the doctor and the patient is the right way to do it. The state shouldn't have any say in what a medical doctor prescribes to a patient. With that said, I mentioned earlier that I spent some time in California. When I first got there, they were a medicinal state only, and the list of ailments that could get you prescribed a card was extensive, and the doctors, generally speaking, would allow you to find one of the ailments in order to meet the requirements, right? So, if it were a 3 to 5 ailments list, if you had to have cancer or you had to have stage X cancer to get, I think that's too far. But I would like to see it be between a patient and the doctor. I think that's the right way to do it.
What about children? If children needed it, would you put any limitations on that?
That's a tough one, but I'm going to go with no. There should not be limitations, again, if it's between a doctor and a patient. And I believe that's probably a harder pill to swallow for a lot of people that would be non-believers that it's has medicinal purposes. But I think that's kind of where it needs to be declassified from Schedule 1 in order to be properly studied in these labs and figure this out. So I know it has benefits. Things like seizures in kids. Obviously you're going to do what you can to help your child. So I guess I'm going to go with no on a age limit. Now, when it comes to recreational consumption, that might be a different story. I think right now in Indiana, I think you have a 21 and over age limit for tobacco. Maybe I'm too old for this now. It used to be 18. I think it's 21 now, is it not?
Yeah, they moved it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, on a recreational user, maybe you have an age limit of 21 or older. But for medicinal purposes, I think that's a decision between a doctor and the patient.
Excellent. Thank you.
Now, how do you feel about a school nurse administering cannabis at school during school hours? If say, a child has seizures, epilepsy really bad, and they have to take a dose, not get high, but, take their medicine.
Yeah, of course.
Do you believe that should be allowed?
I do. Again, if the child has been prescribed cannabis and that is what relieves, or helps them with their epilepsy, their seizures, it really shouldn't be treated much different than any other medicine that is administered at a school by a nurse. Again, if that is something that's been prescribed, I think it's would be the same as any other prescription.
Neil?
Okay, Jestin, who should run the dispensaries? Who should be allowed to work at the dispensaries?
To work at them?
Yeah,
Everybody, the community, everyone. I don't know, are you getting at, I don't think there would be any limits as far as, criminal past or anything like that. I think, I think it should be up to the store owner, just like if you own a McDonald's and you're going to go hire some folks, you'd want to probably find the same kind of hardworking people and, make decisions based on their background and hire them.
well, how do you feel about ensuring that they offer access, that the dispensaries, that is, offer access to reliable, safe, and tested products to meet the patient's needs?
Okay, so let me back up for a second. With your last question, was that about at a medicinal level? Are we talking about fully recreational, or are we talking about, we've legalized for, okay. So, there should be someone in the store that has a medical background, for sure, someone that can help patients, but it wouldn't be required that you are an RN, let's say, or something of that nature. Just to clarify your last question. Now, can you repeat the current question you're on?
How will you ensure that they offer access to reliable, safe, and tested products to meet patients' needs?
Sure. I think we kind of follow the format that other states have set, right? Where a certain portion of the product is sent to a lab that is tested and verified that it doesn't contain any pesticides, mold, as you mentioned earlier. That's kind of one of the benefits of going with the legalizing and tax route, is that you would set up these channels of regulation that sellers would need to, go through a process to be able to get their product into the dispensaries. I think that should happen.
I think that's one of the ideas behind the Cannabis Commission too, that would be responsible for setting up all that infrastructure and regulations.
Yeah. You kind of answered the next question about how to ensure that the women, minorities, and people of color are allowed access to the industry fairly. But let's kind of talk about what about those that have been affected by the war on drugs? As far as our prisoners, should they, for nonviolent offenses, should they have first access to licensing? Or
Are you saying that someone that has Right. Someone that has a marijuana related offense, would they be first in line to get a license? Is that the question?
Not necessarily first in line, but should they be allowed, or let me rephrase that. Somebody with a cannabis charge or a marijuana charge, a nonviolent offense,
Right.
should they be allowed to work in the industry?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know how
Very
much to
good.
expand on that, but yes, absolutely. These what's really should be a misdemeanor that's been at most a misdemeanor that's been treated as a far more serious criminal offense for a long time. We got to get away with that, get away from that for sure.
Good answer. Good answer. Jack?
Along those lines, what would you do to ensure that local people have a fair shot at getting licenses?
At getting what? A license?
Getting licenses for dispensaries and stuff. To be involved in the industry.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. You would just again want to incentivize as best you could local individuals. I don't know, maybe they are homeowners within the district or within the county, within the city. Maybe that wouldn't be a good one either, because not everyone's a homeowner for sure. Maybe just a registered voter within the area.
Okay.
Try to keep it as local as you could. There are going to be people, capitalism is great and everything, but you'll get swamped. Yeah. As soon as it's legal, you'll get a flood of interest from big business and folks that have more money to burn than they should, that will come into the area and try to get those shops. There should be something in place for that. I'm not sure what the right answer is for your specific question.
Excellent. Thank you.
Now, if cannabis is legalized, what kind of tax plan would you envision?
Yeah, similar to a cigarette tax or an alcohol tax. A flat rate on top of whatever the price is from the dispensary. I think it'd be important to, we're seeing all these other states kind of report their annual revenues at this point from 2021, and you're seeing just these enormous numbers, and the amount of money that is going back into the community from the taxes, I think is staggering. And I think that once we see the benefits of that, once that money is coming back into schools, coming back in and paying for infrastructure, going back into, like I said, public schools, going into potential addiction treatment kind of facilities for harder kind of drugs, kind of using those funds kind of across the board. I think a lot of people would be happy with that.
Now, do you think that if Indiana had a lower tax than, say, Illinois and all these other states that are really expensive, do you think it would almost kill the black market? Because the black market's so big now because nobody wants to go to these dispensaries and pay $80 for an eighth or something,
Right.
If Indiana was to tax it, say along the lines of cigarettes and have it lower, let's say 35 for an eighth cannabis, somewhat reasonable, a little expensive, but reasonable. Do you think that would diminish the black market greatly?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one thing that's kind of left out of the conversation is that when you legalize, growing up as a kid here and as my time growing up in Indiana, when you needed to buy cannabis, you had to make a bunch of phone calls to people that, may or may not be home. They might have something today. They might say, call me back in 3 days. You might have to go to their house at 1 a.m. You might have to drive across town, drive across the county. And all of those things kind of put you at risk of basically of being arrested, right? And once you legalize it, you kind of get some of your self-dignity back, right? Like you go around and you're like, okay, I'm a professional. I work my ass off. I go to work every single day. I raise my family. I provide for my family. I'm a great dad. I'm a great brother, son, whatever. I do this one thing that is illegal, and that is I smoke marijuana. Once you take that off the table, then you kind of get some of your self-dignity back. You're like, you know what? I am an upstanding part of my community. I am, excuse me. I'm not what these people are calling me. I'm not a criminal. I no longer have this hanging over my head that I'm going to be arrested at, 1 a.m. trying to buy weed from some guy across town, sitting in the parking lot in your car with your friends and that sort of stuff. So, that alone kind of brings an angle to this that, I think people will appreciate. Now, the black market, I would be happy to, I think most people would be happy to pay a little bit more to not have to worry about getting thrown in jail on their way home, but paying a little bit more for a high quality product, paying a little bit more, knowing that is going back into your community by way of, state funding for, like I said, roads, infrastructure, schools and so forth. So I do think that it would greatly diminish the black market. That was a long.
What kind of tax would you add to a dispensary license?
What was that?
What kind of tax would you add to like a dispensary license? Someone's trying to get a license.
Right. I would need to look and see what other states are doing. I'm not really sure what they're paying. You kind of want to look at probably several factors. A dispensary in, say, downtown Indianapolis is going to have a lot more traffic than a dispensary in Angola, Indiana, where I'm stationed. You might look at what the overall revenue from the dispensary might look like before you came up with the tax. Maybe it was a flat fee to get a license. Maybe it was a percentage of annual revenue. I'm not exactly sure the right answer for that.
One of the things, if I could interject, there's been an awful lot of talk about the exorbitant prices at legal dispensaries, particularly in Illinois. The last couple of times I've been in Illinois, I've gone to a dispensary and gotten a discount, a senior Sunday discount of 20%, which makes it almost the same price as I could buy on the street here in Indiana. So I think some of the business owners are getting surprised, and they're figuring out a way to market their product and sell it at a reasonable price. So I think that argument of it being too expensive is not exactly true all the way across the board.
Well, and you will get into competition. You will have, obviously, if you go to a dispensary and you're buying something and it's a lot more, a lot higher than the dispensary across town, just like you see in every other industry, there will be competition. You will want to lower your rates. You want to be competitive with the others in your market. So I think that would help as well.
And that's a good part of capitalism.
There we go. We found one.
And Neil, I think you're up. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, we've got a question from the audience. And I meant to ask this actually when we were talking more about dispensaries. How much would you support a dispensary license costing?
I'm unsure about that. I think it kind of
That's a hard question to answer.
it is a hard question.
There's really no way to tell anything until you know what the infrastructure is like.
Right. I mean,
what would be excessive to you?
I really couldn't even say that. Again, if you're looking at opening a dispensary that's going to have, several million dollars in revenue in a year, then where do you set the license fee? Is that a $20,000 fee? Is that I don't know where it is. So then you have a smaller town dispensary. You're not going to charge them $20,000 for the same license. Maybe it's a percent of annual revenue kind of idea more than a flat tax. But again, that would be something that the Cannabis Commission or whatever would research and
exactly.
Okay. When Jestin, when cannabis is legalized in Indiana, how should the revenues be allocated? What we do with all the money we're going to make?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it a couple of times before, but I think our public education system has been kind of robbed of funds over the years. A lot of money being taken from the public education bucket and diverted to charter schools and so forth. I'd like to see some of that go back into public schools. Let's give the teachers raises. They put up with a lot. Let's be sure that our schools are in good condition. One of the issues here locally for us is rural broadband. That's something that the state needs to invest in heavily, in my opinion. And then beyond that, whatever's left over, you can kind of figure out where that goes, whether it's divvied up between the counties to do, local renovation projects or infrastructure. I know the state did a fun little like grant for small towns across the state a couple years back, I guess now it is, where they gave funds to renovate storefronts in these, cute little tiny towns across the state. Things like that, I think would be useful. But again, you'd want to start with the more important things: the infrastructure, the broadband, the education.
Okay, good answers on that. Shelley, what do you got?
Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears is not prosecuting minor marijuana possession charges. What are your thoughts about that, and how can we encourage more counties and the entire state to do the same?
I think that's very brave and noble of him. I wish more people would follow in his footsteps, but at the end of the day, it really needs to be at the state level. I don't see, there are so many different district attorneys in the state that you would really want something more uniform, and for that you would need something at the state level. I would like to get more support for him and have others follow in his footsteps, but that's kind of I think that's kind of a good old boy network. And, we talked earlier about the feelings of the police with the delegalizing or the re-legalizing, excuse me. So I think that's a long road to take. I think you want to do it at the state level.
Very good, Jack.
Yeah, one of the things that comes up a lot in the discussions is educating people on the issue. If you're in the, let's assume you're in the General Assembly, what kind of steps would you take to educate your fellow legislators about this issue?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it earlier in the personal stories. I would try to find as many kind of individuals that went through, some treatments that would come to the floor and speak their truth and tell their story. Outside of that, I would do what I can just through, kind of relentlessly hounding folks with information. And, this is, what you said during that last session about this and that was wrong. Here's why. Here's a constituent in your district that treated themselves with the XYZ. That's just kind of, I know that it's a boring answer, but there's not really a great way to change minds outside of these personal stories, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's basic blocking and tackling.
Exactly.
Okay, great, thank you.
Now,
Brian?
what is your plan for all the nonviolent cannabis offenders who have found themselves caught up in the court system, current and past? Should they have the records expunged?
Absolutely. I touched on that a little bit earlier. I think folks should have their records expunged. They've done this in other states, with great success. If you're in the system now, you should be, the case should be dropped. If you're in the jail right now, you should be sent home. They generally kind of bundle these offenses with other offenses, so it's not just a possession charge. So there might be some red tape there that might keep someone behind bars. But yeah, I think for sure records should be expunged. You should have a clean history, assuming that's what you were charged, that the possession was what you were charged with.
Now, what about people that are cultivating, that have been busted for cultivation?
Right, kind of retro. I know that laws are not retroactive, but it would be nice to see that happen with this change. It's caused so much damage to people that it should be a kind of a retroactively applied.
I like to keep my conviction on my record. I'm kind of proud of it.
Keep it, Neil.
We're just about the end of our hour here. Jestin, what else would you like to add about what you plan to do as a representative with cannabis?
I think we touched all the bases. More than anything, I would just be an advocate. Again, I'm a realist. I'm not sure how much one person can do, but I will be a diehard advocate and will support my brethren, as it were, in this fight.
Well, I thank you very much for being here, and good luck to you in the campaign. And that'll do it for this week on Cannabis Conversations with the Candidates. For our crew, I'm Neil Smith. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all. See you. Bye.